Hey all, welcome to Parker's Reefs. In today's episode I'm going to show you these brand new lights from Beautiful Reef called beams. Hey all, welcome to Parker's Reefs and thank you for joining me on yet another episode. And this is an episode I've been really excited to bring to you because it's another product review or introduction where I'm showcasing a product that has been provided by a customer, not a manufacturer or a distributor, so that there's complete transparency. You guys at home can rest assured that anything I say about these lights is my honest and completely unbiased opinion. And today's episode we're going to check out these brand new lights. They come from Russia. They're from a company called Beautiful Reef, and these have been in development for quite some time. And a good friend of mine ordered these two lights here and really wanted me to showcase them on the channel because they're a slightly different approach to LED fixtures for reef aquariums. And I should actually quickly also point out they do a freshwater version as well. But these two models I've got here are for the Reef. And there's quite a few little distinct differences from them to any other LED on the market that really sets them apart. And I'll let you decide whether you think that's a good difference or a bad difference, but I thought it would be a great opportunity to go through them all and showcase just what is the beams LED, whether it would suit your aquarium or not, and at least if nothing else, open your eyes to some new developments that are happening in the space. So let's jump on into it. All right, first and foremost, these beams LEDs are created by a company called Beautiful Reef, and they are working on their English website, but at the moment you can access it from beautifulreef.ru, and if like me you just use the Google Translator and you're good to go. Now these lights do come in a freshwater and a marine version, and they also come in three different lengths. We've got a 40 centimeter, a 60 centimeter, and this one here which is the 90 centimeter. Now they come in at different prices, obviously, for whether it's freshwater or marine. I'll just talk about the marine ones. The 40 centimeter lights come in at approximately $300 Australian. The 60 centimeter lights come in at approximately $500 Australian. And these ones here, the 90 centimeter versions that I'm reviewing today, come in at around about $800 Australian per light. Now, I should point out that the company do say that despite being a 90 centimeter long light, they're good for tanks up to 140 centimeter because they do have these clusters right on the end there, which is designed to give you the spread right out there. And we'll also touch on this diffuser, which is something fairly unique coming up shortly. That being said, if you're talking something like a 4-foot tank, I'd probably run 2 or 3 of these over a 4-foot tank just because they are a pretty narrow little fixture. We'll have a look at some of the par figures and spread and stuff like that a little bit later, but still quite an affordable light when you look at the comparisons with some of the other options on the market. Okay, so Beautiful Reef have been researching and developing and prototyping and building this light for some time. In fact, it started way back in 2012 when there was some talk about looking at what our corals actually needed for light in spectrum and radiation, rather than just looking at what LEDs are available and what could be packaged into a fixture to make a viable product market. So there's been quite a little bit of thought process gone into these lights, and we're going to touch on some of those differences now. Okay, so light uniformity is one of the most important sides that we have to look at when looking at our lighting our reef tank aquariums, and we want to make sure that our corals are not just illuminated from the top, but also the sides, and that we get even distribution. And even distribution is something that the Beautiful Reefs team have really focused on. They're really strong at pointing out you don't want a disco effect because you're going to get hot spots in different parts of your coral, and that's really not what our corals are looking for. They're wanting a nice, even, uniform spread. Now that disco effect is something that we can often see with our eye, but it's also exaggerated even further beyond what we can see with our eye because there are a lot of spectrums that are not actually visible with the human eye, but they are taken up by the coral. So sometimes when you see a disco effect, the disco effect's actually considerably larger than what is noticeable to the eye. So the team are very, very conscious of making sure you're not getting any disco effect. They want to give that really even, uniform light spread. And to do this, they've got LED clusters that are actually spaced unevenly. Now, normally when we think of something we want to get uniform light spread, we think that we actually want to have very symmetric LED clusters. The team at Beautiful Reefs actually believe that that's not what you want. They've gone about spacing these clusters in a way to give a result of even light spread, rather than just giving us the warm fuzzy feeling that we're getting an even light spread by having evenly spread clusters. They've done a little bit of research and development into where these clusters should sit, and they believe they've got them in a location for the best light spread. The clusters in the middle are spaced further apart as there's more overlap from more LED clusters, because obviously in the middle of the fixture you've got clusters all around that section, so you're actually getting spread from other clusters as well. Therefore, you can afford to spread those clusters out a bit more. When you get towards the end of the light, the clusters are actually a little bit closer together because obviously at the end of the light, we've got some clusters here, but then there's going to be no clusters here. So they've bunched these ones up a little bit closer than the two here in the middle. Now, one thing I have to talk about is this diffuser, because I must admit it was one thing that had me a little unsure when I first opened the box that these things come in, because it's a very, very thin diffuser. It's a very thin plastic sort of sheet, and that's not just put there because it's cheap. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The team at Beautiful Reefs say that this thin bit of diffusing plastic here is actually the most expensive part of their fixtures at the moment. The diffusers are very thin, 275 specifically designed for results rather than looks. And I have to admit that, sure, it doesn't look good, but obviously we're after results, particularly if you've got your lights in a hood where you're not going to see them. It's really the purpose of your aquarium light is to give your corals the light they want rather than just be an aesthetic thing in your house. The material currently is only being sold for scientific purposes, but the team at Beautiful Reef have been able to secure some of them for their fixtures, and they're hoping that once this light goes to market and they start moving a lot more units, that they can actually buy this material in a lot more bulk and hopefully reduce the price of their lights even further. I should also point out that apparently, and I can only speak on the ones I've got a couple of the prototype lights here, but apparently the versions that are available on the market now have had the diffuser refined a little bit further, but still expect to see that it is this thin type of material here, because this is the real magic sauce. The secret sauce for these fixtures here is the diffusion based on this super high technology refraction diffuser. All right, the next thing I'll touch on, and it's something that I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed with my Philips Coral Care, is that these units use passive cooling. There's not a single fan on there that's going to get clogged up, get dirty, stop working, allow your lights to overheat. These things are completely passively cooled. They make no noise whatsoever. It's an absolute tick in my book in today's LED fixtures, because I know I've got some fixtures with some fans, and just by nature, when you're around a humid, dusty environments, they end up clogging up. They get noisy, they get dirty, they stop being as effective, and as a result, your LED fixtures get hotter and hotter and stop working as well. These guys have been designed to be completely passively cooled, so you don't have to worry about doing any maintenance on fans like that. These things are going to maintain their temperature themselves. Okay, so the next key point of difference is the way that the Beams LED fixture controls its LEDs for brightness. Now, the majority of LED fixtures out there in the market use something called pulse width modulation. Now, what that does is it actually flickers the LED, and depending on how long of a gap between the flicks and how long the blast of light is on will then give you the impression as to how bright the LED is. Now, whilst that works for your eyes and my eyes, it can actually be detrimental to the corals, where they're actually getting a strobing effect rather than a constant light source. And that is a huge point of difference for the beams here. Rather than using pulse width modulation for the majority of their dimming control, until you get down to the very low end of the brightness, for the majority of the range, it's actually done using constant current reduction, which is something that I haven't heard of before, but apparently it does not flicker the LED, so you don't get that strobing effect. Again, when I say strobing, it's not something that we can see by the eye, but it is something our corals are noticing. So that's a huge technology they've brought in. I personally don't know of any other LED fixtures out there in the market that use this technology. It's not to say they don't. If you know of any, be sure to let me know in the comments down below, but it is something that the Beams light absolutely are very proud that they use, and I'm really curious to see what the long-term results of that would have on corals. Okay, the next thing I want to touch on is LED binning. Now, I'm sure some of you out there will know this, but some won't, and that is that not all LEDs are made the same. The manufacturing of LEDs is not perfect, and there can be some differences in brightnesses and spectrum in a batch of LEDs that are made. Such variations in intensity can be up to 30% difference, and also the peak emitted spectrum can be quite large, whereby a royal blue LED is actually closer to a blue or a violet LED than actually what it's meant to be, a royal blue. Providing information about the bin of each LED better informs the user and provides more accurate spectral calculations. Now, what does that mean? It means that knowing the bin of the LEDs used, i.e. the info about the spectral peak and intensity of each LED, allows for much more accurate spectrum calculations. The software calculates the emitted radiation and spectral plot so that the end user can adjust not only the intensity, but also easily adjust the spectrum by looking at the spectral plot in the app itself. Next point of difference there is that this unit actually has no white LEDs. Now, the combined effect of the mint and PC amber LEDs smooths out the mid and long wavelength areas of the spectrum, and I'll show you on screen now one of the spectral plots so you can have a look at that in action. All right, next thing I want to talk about is a lighting wizard. Now, there are a couple of options here with the beams. At the moment, you've got some base spectrums you can pick from, and then you can alter some the intensities and the start times and end times and things like that. The Beautiful Reefs team are actually working on enhancing this further so that you can set up your lights. It will then run you through a wizard asking what size tank you have, what corals you've got in there, some other general questions, and it'll then produce a spectrum that will suit your tank perfectly. Of course, if the user wishes, they can still adjust some different times and peaks and colors if they want to, but they've taken that guesswork out for the everyday user, because they did a survey and they asked that the majority of people don't actually want to fiddle with individual colors in their spectrum. They just want to know that they're building in a schedule that's going to work and work for their tank and their corals. All right, one more thing I will quickly touch on, because I don't have a huge amount of information on it, is that the team is also working on what they call the Beams Max, which is not to supersede the beams here at all. It's actually just going to be their ultra high-end fixture, and it's going to come with a lot more channels of control and a lot more LEDs. So stay tuned to their website to find out more information about the Beams Max coming in future. All right, I guess we're at the point now where we should rip out the computer and I'll connect to one of these lights so you can see how they're operated. Then lastly, we'll pop it over my Dream Reef tank. We'll set them all up there so you can have a look at how the corals react, what the fixtures look like, see if we can notice any difference from disco effects or anything like that, and then we'll summarize the video from there. All right, so I've jumped into one of the lights here. Now, to connect to it, all you need to do is to connect to the Wi-Fi that it emits. So this one is the TS Beams R1001. Connect to that, you put in the password Light Manager, and then you go to the URL, which is 10.11. The number of the fixture that you're connected to, 0.1. So I've gone to that, and once I load that up, I get this basic control from here, so I can add some spectrum there. So add the UV in, add some royal blue in, add some normal blue in, add some, I think that's like a cyan, and then a mint, there's the amber, and then there's a bit of red. And as you can see, as I'm building that there, I get this little spectral graph here. Now, obviously I can also build in I can add in some points on my graph here and save that to the fixture. And also down the bottom, I have the option of connecting some lights into a group and then controlling them that way. But for the purpose of this demonstration, let's just continue on with the single fixture. All right, so we come back out here, and like I said, I can show you, we can just increase the overall power, and you can see that that line there is the 100% marker, but you can overdrive these LEDs as well. Now, as touched on, there's actually no white LED fixtures in here. We do that with the amber and the cyan. In fact, if I turn all the UVs and blues off, so we can just get a white light. So I'm going to build a sort of spectrum that I want to test over my tank, and I'm going to go pretty well all out on the blues. I'm going to go pretty heavy on the light blues. In fact, let's max that out. Add a little bit of cyan, a little bit of amber, and almost no red. And that's the spectrum I'm really looking for. You can see the total emitted power shows you there at 114%. We can also see our graph there. I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that as Sam demo. Description must not be empty. YouTube example. Okay, great. Now what I want to do is take this light, sit it up over my Dream Reef tank, and we'll give it a shot from there and see, just see how it looks over these over this tank, and just see whether we can see any of this disco effect that's present or not present. See how the corals react, and go from there. All right, so I've mounted the beams above my Dream Reef tank. Now, remembering this is a 2.1 meter long tank by 90 centimeters depth and 75 centimeters tall, and I only have 2 of the 100 centimeter fixtures sitting above it. And I'll open up the hood so you can see how they're mounted. I literally have them sitting in a very uneven path, just to make sure that they're sitting on the brace. I didn't really want to go breaking out my friend's mounting things so that I could set them up on my lighting rig. So they're literally just sitting very closely to the water's surface, and like I said, they're not overly evenly spread whatsoever. Just got them sitting diagonally across the bracing there, but we're getting a pretty good result. The light's very, very uniform for two small fixtures sitting very unevenly across a tank this size. I'm quite impressed by the spread. Now, I will get the par meter out, but I should point out that it's very unfair to expect crazy high par figures from two small fixtures over a tank this large, but I know you guys out there will want to see the par numbers, so I'll check it out. As far as spread and things go, you can see there's a little bit of shimmer there. Not a huge amount, which doesn't surprise me based on the amount of work they've put into the diffuser and to make sure that the corals are very evenly lit. And I've got to say, from the fact that all of these corals are very nicely lit up, except for maybe that back corner, and that's probably because there's no light over there whatsoever. The back corner looks a little bit dark, but that's to be expected. I'm quite impressed, and now I would expect to run probably at least 4 of these fixtures over this tank, but with just the 2 sitting there, let's grab the par meter and just see where things are at. Oh, wow, we're getting huge par there, talking 500 par, probably about 4 inches below the fixture. If I come down about a foot below the fixture, still getting very good par, around 300 there. It's quite impressive. Now, if I move away from the fixture, that drops off pretty drastically. In fact, if I come down lower, we actually get better par because I'm on a pretty strong angle from the light. The light sits probably around about there, and you can see we're getting, sorry, I get it up so you can see around 230 there. I come back up directly under the light. You can see, actually if I get directly under the light, 400 par there, 500 par. Now, like I said, this is a really difficult test because I'm not really mounting these lights the way you would expect them to be mounted, but I just wanted to see if they actually had any oomph at all, or whether they were just a very visual, even light spread. And I'm pretty happy to say that with just 2 lights over there, that these are not a supplement light. They are absolutely the workhorse of your lighting arrangement. So I'm quite impressed. That's a lot of par. And like I said, if I sit that onto the scape there, despite being nowhere near directly under the fixture and a good foot down, we're still seeing a good 160 par there. So it's quite impressive. And in fact, yeah, if I get it more under the light, we're talking more like 300 par. So I can only imagine if I had, say, 4, maybe even 6 of these fixtures above my tank, that the spread, the par and the color would be very, very impressive. So hats off to Beautiful Reefs. That's a quality spread, quality color, quality par. Nice work. Okay, so curiosity got the better of me. I figured rather than have 2 of these fixtures sort of half set up across the whole tank, let's run them this way so I can sit them on the bracing and have 2 over half my tank, and we can check out the par values there, which is probably going to be a lot more of a fair representation. Now, if I go somewhere in between those 2 fixtures, you can see we're talking about 160 there. If I go directly under one of the fixtures on my rock, which is a good foot down from the tank, we're talking 200 par. See how long that par sort of holds on for. We're still 100 a fair way across, which would be, normally that would be intercepting. If I had another fixture, it would be over here. So the fact that there's not, and we're getting 100 par there is a good sign. If I come in between these 2 fixtures and see if I can get down to the sand bed on the correct sort of angle, which I can't. I've got to build a better mount for my new pass meter, but we're still talking a solid 100 par down on the sand. In fact, more, talking 120, 130, which is quite impressive. I'll see if I can get right up the back here. My sensor's getting a little bit wobbly on that mount. Apologies, guys. This did only arrive in the mail this week, so I've just done the old zip tie to the to the algae scraper for now. But yeah. Okay, so 2 of these fixtures over I guess a meter of my tank is absolutely around the values I would expect for LPS and SPS to grow. So over a 2.1 meter tank, 4 of these fixtures would give you some pretty crazy results. Now, bearing in mind that I would probably mount them that way, I wouldn't have them going front to back. It'll just give you the fixtures are long and narrow and the tank's long and narrow, so you've got to utilize it that way rather than this way. But even still, you can see the very even lights coverage there. Again, we're only trying to get light to about halfway across the tank, because then I'd have another two, but they're well and truly up to the task, and that makes these lights quite an affordable option. All right, guys, there you have it. That's the introduction / kind of review of the Beams LED fixture from Beautiful Reefs over in Russia. I hope you found it as interesting as I did, just to see how some different manufacturers out there are going about making Reef LEDs with some different thought process, some different technologies, and just getting an overall different outcome, hopefully for the better. I'm keen to see what these fixtures do over my friend's tank over a long period of time. I'm talking 6, 12 months, 24 months, even 36 months, because I really like some of the technology in there about not using pulse width modulation. I really like the result, or the outcome from the diffuser, although I must admit it does seem a little bit flimsy, whatnot, but I guess the idea of the diffuser is not to poke it, it's to diffuse your light above your corals and make sure that they're getting light from all angles, and I feel like it does that job pretty well. I'm also super impressed by the par and the spread, particularly for the amount of money these lights cost. So I'm going to get these back to my buddy so he can put them up over his tank, and then I'll touch base with him in a little while to see how they're doing in a longer term review, because unfortunately for me, I was only able to put these over my tank for a few minutes for the review or for the purpose of this review, but I'll touch base with him again in a while to see how they go for a long period of time. Now, I should touch on, if you're after more information about these lights, or you're looking to order some, jump on the beautifulreefs.ru website. Now, the .com English version will come soon, but the .ru version with Google Translate works perfectly fine. I've been on there for the last couple of days non-stop, and there is a wealth of information. If you click through some of the links, and they've got a heap of information there. Also, be sure to check out the 2 very detailed articles from Expert Aquarist. I'll put the link to those down in the description below. If you're interested in some of the technology and how they've gone about developing this light, it's an absolute, it's a great read, is as far as I'll go, really. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, be sure to check out those links. Other than that, guys, I'll wrap things up there. If you have any questions for either myself or for the team at Beautiful Reefs about the beams or anything else, feel free to pop it in the comments section down below. I personally reply to each and every question, so that is the best way to get hold of me. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see some more reviews on some new and slightly left field, or just a different approach to products, be sure to hit that like button. That will tell YouTube that you thought this video was good, which will then promote it to more reefers, which will eventually mean that I get the ability to do more videos like this. So be sure to smash that like button. And last but not least, if you haven't subscribed yet, guys, I'd appreciate it. It takes 2 seconds of your time, costs no money at all. Just hit that subscribe button down in the bottom corner. Anyway, guys, I'll leave it at that. Till next time, stay safe, keep reefing. Bye.